Hey guys, in November of 2023 I did a video talking about potentially using Tannus Armor as a replacement to CushCore. And it's now July of 2025, and since that time I've ridden about 9,000 miles on my bikes. The majority of those miles have been miles on bikes which have had Tannus Armor installed in them. So I feel like I've got enough experience where I can give an update on my experience, good and bad, with Tannus Armor. Now, before we get too far in the video, I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what I'm talking about. Tannus makes two products. These are the inserts to their two inserts. One is an insert called Tannus Tubeless, and Tannus Tubeless requires you to use stands and some type of tubeless setup, and it protects the rims. The other product they make is called Tannus Armor. Tannus Armor basically is an insert that goes around the tube, and then you insert the tube with the Tannus Armor inside your tire. What I'm going to be talking about today is just Tannus Armor. Okay, so let's get into it. First thing I want to get into, I just want to say that the Tannus Armor really works for me. You know, it's very easy to install the Tannus Armor. Yeah, I had a broken spoke and a broken nipple. You know, when I broke those, I was not in any way have any anxiety about, you know, disassembling or taking the tire off and replacing the spoke, because I can put the tube and the Tannus Armor on and off so easily that you know, you just don't have to worry about it. The second part, and why it really works for me, is that the tires stay inflated. I used to have a problem with CushCore where, you know, depending on how good the installation was, I would have some leak. So a lot of times you'd come in and basically have to significantly inflate the tire before you rode the bike. But with Tannus Armor, you have to check it every week or so. But basically, you know, when you go to ride your bike, the tires are at least significantly inflated. You know, the protection does not go away. I mean, you know, with the Tannus Armor, the armor will compress a little bit, but nothing significant. And so as a result, you know, unlike CushCore, where, you know, the CushCore sort of loses some of its effect, I mean, the stands loses some of its effectiveness after, you know, after a couple of months. The Tannus Armor protection's, you know, always there, and you don't have to worry about whether it's there and it's going to work when you're in a really you know, tough terrain situation. It's there and it works. So that's why it works for me. You know, a great you know, product. Now, the handling of the bike was something I was worried about. With CushCore, you really got some great handling. You can get the air pressures low, and you can you know, really cause the tire tread to dig in. Now, I will say with the Tannus Armor, for me, the handling of the bike is not changed in an appreciable or significant way. I just can't tell it. I can see, though, because you do have to have, you know, a minimum pressure, and as a result, I could see where some people may feel like you know, it does affect the handling, and it does affect the handling to the point where they would prefer not to use it, but to use CushCore. But for me, you know, the handling really, you know, or the handling difference between this and CushCore, it was not noticeable. Now, the second thing I want to get into is I did have two flat tires, even though I had Tannus Armor installed, and I want to talk about those. In both cases, the reason I got the flat was because the tire was deflated. Or the tire was not properly inflated. When I you know, disassembled the tire and the tube, in both cases I had snake bites where you know, the tire had compressed and had caused the the rim to make two holes on where it compressed up against the tube. And that, when you have a snake bite, I mean, it's typically because you don't have enough air pressure for whatever you hit. And that's what I had in both cases. Now, what I found based on that is, I have to have a minimum of 25 PSI in that rear tire or it will go flat. I think in one case I had about 22 PSI, and in the other I had a little bit more than that, let's just say 23, 24, somewhere along in there. But at a minimum you need 25, and what I typically will do will inflate them up to about 26 or 27. But I did get some flats. Once I got the rear tire pressure and I figured out what I needed to do, I have not had any other flats using the Tannus Armor. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is something I call Tannus Armor Stretch. And what I found is that I have had to take the tires apart, both for the broken spoke and broken nipple I talked about earlier. But I also, a couple of times, I've changed out the tires. In other words, I've either got new tires or figured out I wanted a different tire configuration. So, I've disassembled tire setups where I did have the Tannus Armor installed. And what I found is particularly where I had CushCore inside the tire before and it's sticky, when you try to pull the Tannus Armor out, it will be stuck to the tire casing, and as a part of, you have to use quite a bit of force to pull the Tannus Armor out. And I think as a part of doing that, I have stretched the Tannus Armor. Now, once you stretch the Tannus Armor and you go to try to put it back inside the tire, it won't fit because it's stretched. So. What I found, a pretty easy workaround, if you just go in and cut straight through the Tannus Armor, all the way through, then reinsert it. So what you have a little bit of overlap in the Tannus Armor. I've had the overlap, stuck the tube inside the Tannus Armor, and then inflated it. And, I was worried that there may be some type of bump in the tire or some type of abnormality because of the Tannus Armor overlap. But I guess because the Tannus Armor will compress and because the inner tube, is quite flexible in there, it all, works itself out, and as a result, there's not a problem. So even though it will stretch and cause you a problem, if you just cut it, it's a pretty easy workaround. Now, I just talked about the three things why I like it when I had some flats and the Tannus Stretch. Another thing I want to add is that it's very important to use the right size tubes. It's almost impossible. I'm not saying impossible. It's very hard to get the thing to work right if the tubes are too large. So what happens with the Tannus Armor, if you're using Tannus Armor on a tire that's, say, 27.5 by 2.5, you're going to need a tube that is not a 2.5 tube, but you're going to need a tube that's like a 2.1, a 1.9, 2.0, 2.1 tube. So you need that smaller tube. And when you do the installation with the smaller tube, everything goes very smoothly. Now, if you try to do the installation with the larger tube, you can do it. But, it's pretty difficult just because the tube is too big. So I would highly recommend getting the right size tube if you're going to do the Tannus Armor installation. Well, there you go, guys. That's been my experience with Tannus Armor. I hope you'll give it a try, and I hope it'll work for you. Anyway, I hope I've given you something to think about, and I'll see you guys at the top.